How's it going? Welcome back to United View and welcome again to a Tactical View special. And as is tradition, before United play Arsenal, I've got James from Aftv. So welcome on the show, James. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll be hearing a lot about what went wrong yesterday. So I was tipping Arsenal for the title. I thought, if anything, after City have just won the treble, they might drop off a little bit and Arsenal have probably got what it takes to push them a little bit further and maybe go all the way. But if you're losing or, well, dropping points against Fulham, something's not adding up there. So what's happened? Why has that all gone wrong?
Look, I think what I would say as a fan base, and I'm speaking for Arsenal fans here, I'm very aware on United View, as Arsenal fans, if we believe our team are going to win the title, I don't think one draw at home to Fulham should be changing our minds. I think if we believe we're going to win it, then, you know, whatever bump in the road comes, you've got to still believe. Man City, last year when they weren't at their best, drew at home to Everton and then lost at home to Brentford just before the World Cup break. So, you know, it can happen. You can win titles, you can even win trebles and have those results. The thing I'd say about Arsenal, though, where I look at those results for Man City, Brentford was sublime that day, deserved all 3 points on the day, and Everton, okay, they didn't play great, their goal was peppered, but Demarai Gray put one in the top corner. The problem Arsenal have, and I think something United are going to try and exploit here, is Arsenal have errors littered in this team. Whether it be Saka playing blind passes to former United player Andreas Pereira, and Aaron Ramsdale scrambling towards goal, whether it be being a man up and still not being able to pick everyone up on a set piece. Arsenal just have this ability to concede really sloppy goals. So the funny thing is that Fulham game had positives. We probably played some of our best football of the season for a 25 minute period when Zinchenko came on, Vieira came on, but the football's not played in 20-25 minutes, and it often is down to moments and fine margins, and Arsenal were on the wrong side of a lot of those, and a lot of it, you know, down to their own doing.
I mean, that actually doesn't sound a million miles away from what United have had this season. It's been maybe a few minutes of good spells and then some horrible mistakes, structure falling apart, completely empty midfield, and Casemiro, at his age, whatever, 65 as he's looking now, he just can't cover the space. It's useless. So, without any further ado, let's have a look at what you're trying to do. How are Arsenal setting up? Because from my perspective, the first game of the season I watched, and you set up with a back three. Obviously, Saliba was the only proper centre-back. And it looked like it evolved from last year from a midfield box into more of a diamond there. So you got Havertz as more of a second striker. Is that how it is still, or?
Yeah, we did have a bit of that, and your observation's spot on. We'll get Ramsdale in there and we start just building the back four, so apologies everyone, bear with me for a sec while I just build it. But it was Timber starting. Timber's been unavailable, so let's just have a look at the Fulham game. Kivior, let's get him in the team. Thomas Partey is the starting right back. Now, Thomas Partey starting a right back has been a real topic of conversation. Arsenal fans haven't been happy about it. He's not a natural right back. People are wondering, when you got Ben White there, why you're kind of changing so much what worked last season. Rice, Ødegaard in the midfield three, and another big topic of conversation has been this guy, Kai Havertz, because he's been starting game in the left of the midfield three. I didn't want him starting games. I don't even think he is a midfielder, but that's what Arteta's persisting with. And again, it wasn't Nketiah leading the line, but it kind of has been, so I'm just going to chuck him in anyway. He has started the other two games. And then we've had, of course, Saka, and we've had Martinelli. There he is. Okay, so what this has basically been, apologies if that's not straight enough, I think it sort of is.
That's all right. I'll just make him a bit bigger for you.
Oh yeah, cool. So what we've essentially had with this 11 is Arteta. We've been hearing a lot of the term flip the dynamic. So it's still the same 3-2-5 when we build up, but rather than it being Zinchenko at left back coming inside, everything's switching. So Partey is inverting, that leaves him and Rice almost sitting. White comes across, there's your back three. Havertz can get in the pockets with Ødegaard, Saka and Martinelli hold the width. Now that's all well and good. The problem is, yes, in theory, Saliba's occupying similar positions as always, White's occupying similar positions, Partey, Ødegaard, Saka. In a lot of ways that hasn't been affected. The roles haven't been flipped. So what we used to have was Zinchenko in this space, who's a crisper passer than Rice. Rice has looked very good on the ball, but Zinchenko on that left foot has been finding these pockets into a box-to-box midfielder, which was Xhaka. Havertz isn't a box-to-box midfielder. He's been playing more as, I mean, it's this term in German football called Raumdeuter, which means space invader. And essentially, and I'm taking what Arteta's been saying in press conference about he's been making runs and the players haven't found him, and the fact that he's been very uninvolved on the ball, it tells me that a lot of his movement has been to get forward and sort of join that front line, and the forward can drop in, or maybe Declan Rice can come forward a little bit and Partey comes across. The way you talk about Havertz coming into sort of that number 10 and you having that diamond, we did see that against Forest, but we haven't really seen it since. So this is kind of large. If I'm doing like an average 11/system, Arsenal have been playing around with something like this, but the problem is that it's just totally lacked fluidity. We've lost Ben White overlapping. Why? Because the minute he overlaps and you've got your right back inverting, you've got half your back four committing to that right hand side. So he's not able to do it as much. If we're talking about Ben White overlapping on the right when it was Zinchenko at left back and you're flipping it, well, Kivior's not doing the same on the other side. So where Martinelli had Gabriel, who defended that space brilliantly, Zinchenko, who would feed balls through the lines, and Xhaka, who would overlap, underlap and provide a box-to-box option, Martinelli's now lost all of that, including Jesus, who would support him, and he's having to do a lot of the work by himself. So it's a work in progress, but it's not looked great so far. We've lacked fluidity. We've dominated games. We've actually conceded very few chances. So one thing I'll say for the system, our errors are what's conceding or causing the goals. It's Arsenal just being clowns. Not that the system is broken defensively anyway. So sorry I've rambled on there a little bit, but I just want to give you a really good picture as to where it has kind of worked a little bit, but largely where it hasn't. I don't think we're going to play this on Sunday. Let me say that, but this is what we have been doing.
Okay, we'll get back to what you think will happen on Sunday in a minute. But from my perspective, I think I agree in terms of the dynamics being flipped, but it not really suiting everyone, because obviously, as you mentioned, Havertz for me really is someone that needs to arrive in spaces, as you said, whereas on the opposite side, Odegaard here needs the ball, Saka needs the ball. Again, Martinelli's probably more on the space side. He wants the ball in space, and obviously, whereas Saka, because he wants the ball all the time, what he needs is people that create the space for him. But so he needs runners around him to do that. Whereas because Martinelli wants to receive in space, you're better off leaving him isolated. So the dynamics I'm not sure they're working quite as well. And also with Declan Rice in here, I think obviously Rice, look, he's a brilliant player, and he's somebody that for a long time I think has been really disrespected by a lot of people in terms of how good he actually is. But if there was one criticism I do have of him, I don't think he's the best at taking the ball on the half turn and progressing forward. I think he'd rather play facing the game, so dropping a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. And actually you do notice that sometimes. You do notice he gets quite deep to receive the ball, and maybe Partey then comes in. Like I noticed that Fulham, I was at the game and I did notice. That's a really good pick out from you. He has shown a real crispness in his passing through the lines, more than I thought he had in his locker. It was very Partey-esque. I think Partey is one of the best in the leagues at just knowing how to thread the ball through the eye of a needle. But Rice improved in that area, but I know what you mean. Partey and Zinchenko at that base had an ability to go, give me the ball, and you think, is that really where you want to take the ball? And then they do, and they turn, and suddenly 3 men have been taken out of the game. We haven't seen that quite yet, but I think he's got the attributes to do it.
Yeah, I think so. But that's one interesting thing from a United perspective, is that potentially that's an area to exploit, because if Declan Rice is dropping in, Havertz isn't really, as we've said, he's not someone who's going to come deep and demand the ball. There's that clip going around Twitter of Havertz receiving the ball, this sort of position, 30 yards in front of him. What does he do? Turns, passes backwards, straight to a Fulham player.
Yeah, that was a bad moment. The Emirates crowd were not happy with that at all, and I can't blame him, because there'd been a frustration. We're 1-0 down for so long of the game. People weren't really understanding why Kai Havertz wasn't playing, and when he gets that ball, you know, Rice isn't even in a position. He literally has pretty much all this space here to just receive and turn, and that's what Fabio Vieira did really well when he came on. And so that's one of the potential options going to this United game. Can Fabio Vieira, after that cameo, come in and make a big difference? But with Kai Havertz, that screams confidence to me. You know, no player in their right mind has all that space and thinks, I just want to give it first time. It's not the worst thing. You know, if you got your back to goal, sometimes it's quicker to just lay it off one touch into the player running into that space. So it's not a terrible idea. It's the fact that Rice was in no position to receive it. You have players around him, and Kai Havertz has so much space that you think, we are urgently trying to get a goal back here. Why don't you turn it and drive? He hasn't shown drive, he hasn't shown sprint. He's won a lot of ground duels, and he's got stuck in from a pressing perspective. And I do think he makes good runs. You know, he seems to find himself in areas of the pitch that he can do something, but then he's kind of not really been too effective from them. So, Yeah, it's caused a lot of friction in the Arsenal fan base.
Yeah, I can see why. It was a bad clip. I think it just screamed to me, as you say, lack of confidence, but also hasn't scanned. Because if he scanned, there's only one right decision there.
Yeah, spot on.
But I think, his best position for me is getting in the box as a second striker. I think if you give him too much responsibility to get on the ball and link the play, that's not his game. But he's good at interpreting space and he's good in the counter press. And he's actually not a bad option to go long to as well, because he's got a decent frame, can hold the ball up fairly well.
Sorry to cut you there, you know who he reminds me of? And I'm not saying he's not as good. Sorry, he's not as good and hasn't hit these levels, and he's not as aggressive, but prime Dele Alli, where you thought, he's not a 10, but he's not a central midfielder, he's not a wide player, he's not a striker, but you just want him on the end of things, press really well, work really hard, have some flair in tight areas and show some invention, but ultimately get on the end of things when Kane drops out. I think that's what Havertz could do, but we're not seeing it.
I mean, I agree. I think it's a great comparison. I think he's the only thing that's very different between the two is I think Dele Alli was a much better ball striker than Havertz.
Havertz is a surprisingly good striker of a football. He just doesn't do it enough. I think if I leave with one prediction today, it's Havertz will score a great goal this season. Like something that you go, wow, what a strike. Like he does have that in his locker. We just don't see it enough.
Fair enough. For me, I just don't think he can get the connection properly, particularly on his left. On his right, maybe, I haven't seen too much, but on his left, I'm not too impressed. Right, before we go on to what Arsenal might do, in terms of a United team, I think, obviously this is United view, so pretty much everyone's going to be tuned in with what United have been doing in recent weeks. In terms of the starting 11, we haven't got news yet on whether Varane will be fit. If he isn't, then that's a pretty easy straight swap for Lindelof. I think there's not too many debatable picks in this team because the way the injuries are at the moment, Mason Mount's out, so Eriksen's probably going to start. The only thing I can see being different is Scott McTominay playing. Obviously, you mentioned off air before the show, did a good job last year against Arsenal, so we could maybe see McTominay coming in here in midfield somewhere. Maybe he comes in for Martial and United go with Anthony and Rashford as a front two, Bruno on the wing, possibly some sort of different configuration with McTominay involved. But I think it'll be Onana in goal, Wan-Bissaka and Dalot as the fullbacks, unless... I mean, I can't see Martinez getting shunted out to the other fullback with Varane potentially injured, so that's probably the back four with Varane/Lindelof depending on fitness. Casemiro probably anchoring play. He has been immensely frustrating of late. He's been doing pretty much everything wrong in terms of the technical basics. When he's in the press in particular, rather than getting low, getting ready to react to his man, he's standing tall. All it takes is a little body feint or a little chop one way. He sticks out a leg, gets bypassed. If he wins the ball first, great. If he doesn't, he's bypassed and he can't chase back. He has one pace. It's poor. Bruno, he's been brilliant against Forest, but the Forest game was really interesting. So it was United's best performance of the season so far, but the reason it was so good was that Forest were incredibly passive out of possession. Rather than pressing high, which Arsenal will do very, very pretty much continuously throughout the game, it's really intense actually. I watched a few goal kicks that Fulham have taken, and Arsenal are straight at it, sprinting right from the moment the ball's touched. But Forest, in contrast, were really passive, and what that meant was that United could just walk the ball up the pitch. So if you get Varane, Martinez, Wan-Bissaka, it tends to be a back three when United have got the ball. One player pushes into midfield, whether it's Martinez pushing up, a fullback inverting, tends to be more of a 3-2-5, pretty similar to a lot of the top teams. Something a bit like that. Sometimes Dalot and Eriksen switch over, but it's very fluid within that structure. But what United were able to do against Forest was basically just walk the ball up to the halfway line, and obviously when you do that, everyone's camped in the opposition half. If you lose the ball, you've got players around the ball, press quickly, win it back, nice and easy. But obviously Arsenal won't be quite so lenient, and that could cause a problem. And one thing I've noticed with United's midfield that could be a big issue is that Bruno in particular, and also Casemiro, I think with Bruno it's because of his creativity. He always wants to be in the perfect position to hit that hero ball, that killer pass over the top. And to do that, when he's dribbling, when he's carrying the ball, he's not the best in tight spaces. He always has the ball just out of his feet so that if he wants to, he can play that killer pass at a moment's notice. Now, against a passive midfield, that's great because he's got the time and space. Against a high press, because that ball's that much further away, it's much easier to nick off him, and that is where United start to lose the ball. Now, as good as United were against Forest, a stat that I've got for that game, which I think sums up the issue I've got with United at the moment, is that United still lost the ball 147 times in the game. For comparison, Liverpool against Newcastle. Don't know why it says Fulham up there, but Liverpool against Newcastle with 10 men, considering they're attacking, only lost the ball 123 times in the game. Right. So given that United were basically camped in the Forest half for the entire game.
It's a great start, that.
Yeah, the number of ball losses is really concerning, and the fact that then you've got players not behaving right on transition, not reacting before we've lost the ball, and Casemiro not getting his basics right is a big problem. So that's the United team. Let's match up the two teams, and you can tell me what you think Arsenal are going to do and how they might react to United. So, floor's yours.
Yeah, so this is what I think Arsenal will do, and it does look very different to what I've been saying, what I've sort of been breaking down about our first 3 games. I think this is much closer to what we did in the Community Shield. I think Zinchenko will come back in. I just think he's crucial to getting us ticking in midfield. There's no surprise that we just played our best football when we've had him. He starts away at St James's Park. Everyone talks about needing defensive options, but we get a 2-0 win. We're able to play through them, cut through them and win 2-0 there. Last season, we started those 5 wins in a row. We played some great football because Zinchenko was in. This season, 3 games without him, and we've just struggled for momentum till he comes on the pitch and suddenly we're looking good. I'd be amazed if Arteta doesn't play him, but if he does, then it's either a fitness issue or he's trying to move away from him and trying to go for someone who's more reliable. But I just think Zinchenko has to be on this pitch somehow. The other thing is Declan Rice. Now, I've talked about Xhaka playing as a box-to-box and how it's affected Gabriel Martinelli. Suddenly with this team, and the other thing is Gabriel Magalhaes coming back. He's not started a single game this season. But once again, you get everyone. Remember what I said about Saliba and White playing in similar positions? It does start to look quite similar, but suddenly everything just feels far more complete than balanced. These pockets that Arsenal players get themselves into really well. Nketiah deserves to lead the line. It was a masterclass of a cameo against Fulham. I don't use that word lightly. He was really, really good. He came on and completely changed our dynamic in that final third. But I think the key thing is, can Zinchenko get on the ball and feed the ball into the lines to Declan Rice? Can Martinelli, who comes inside, get a real lung-busting option around the outside or even on the underlap, which we saw Fabio Vieira do quite a bit in the game against Fulham? Because he's been so isolated, he's had to do so much. He's tried hero ball stuff because the options aren't there for the natural 1-2s. I mean, anyone who's played football knows that the easiest thing when you get that ball, you take that first touch, is knowing where your next pass is going to be. And so often, I don't think Saka and Martinelli in these first 3 games have known where the next pass is going to be when they get that ball, because they're trying to understand new things and the players are getting up to speed. And I don't think the options have been that natural to help them. Ben White, like you said, he offers another option. I think this is going to be crucial against Dalot, because Dalot, being a right-footed defender, might actually have a little bit of joy against Saka if he tries to come inside. So the question is, can he get on the outside, or can Ødegaard underlap? He doesn't do it too much, but he does it sometimes to offer something there. So this is what I think Arsenal will do. It's reverting to last season. It's the same 11 as last year, only Rice for Xhaka, and I'll always say Rice is an upgrade on Xhaka, though Xhaka ended really well. And the big other debate was, does Eddie Nketiah keep his place now Jesus is fit? I just think that cameo, had he not been that impressive, I'd say get Jesus on that pitch, he's too good. But he was that impressive, so Eddie keeps his spot.
Fair enough. I mean, I think the bit that worries me most as a United fan, I think 1v1, Wan-Bissaka can probably just about do a job on Martinelli. Mm-hmm. I think it's a tough match, but Wan-Bissaka's great in those situations. Yeah. What worries me, as you say, is this side here. Now, obviously, because Dalot is right-footed, that should help. But I think what Saka is brilliant at, and better than almost any other winger in the league, is when he's up in these situations, he's so good at creating that little bit of space for himself to receive the ball. And it's sometimes double movement, so sometimes he'll feign to go in behind, then he'll come deeper, which obviously distracts the fullback. That gives him the little bit of separation he needs to receive the ball. And obviously Dalot can then press, probably curve it around to be from the inside if we get a ball onto the pitch there. But yeah, as you say, the issue then is Ben White getting around the outside, but also Ødegaard in here. Now, something that United have struggled with quite a bit in not just this season so far, but also the season before, is actually when the striker is able to pin Lisandro Martinez in these situations. The underlap doesn't get tracked because Eriksen doesn't have the legs to do it. Yeah. Casemiro doesn't really have the legs to do it either. And obviously, if the striker's pinned Martinez, Varane can't always get around and cover. Yeah. So I think that's an issue that I'd be quite wary of, is that Dalot will probably want to be quite aggressive with Saka, and that will open that channel for Ødegaard potentially. I'd be probably more worried if Vieira was there, because I think he's a little bit quicker, possibly a bit more more direct. But that channel is something that really worries me if Nketiah is smart enough, which he probably is, to pin Martinez in those situations.
Yeah, do you think McTominay starts because of the legs needed? You know, you talk about tracking runners, and not just tracking runners, but having a runner in beyond when you're trying to hold up the play, you're maybe trying to bypass the Arsenal press a little bit, buy yourself a little bit of time. And I think United are going to have moments of possession in this game. I don't think it's going to be all one-way traffic, you know, and you're hoping for a counter-attack. I think you have spells of possession and Arsenal drop back into a shape. That's another reason why I think Rice will start, because off the ball, that becomes, you know, Rice coming in here and your back four and your two midfielders. So I do think Arsenal will show that side as well and respect United. I just wonder whether McTominay, and I'm not his biggest fan, I'm not. I think he's better than, I think he's seen as a little bit of a, I don't say a joke, that's so harsh, but you know, he's kind of like, you know, like when the £30 million bids came in, it was like, take the money, you know, take it and run. And it's like, listen, there's value there and he can offer something. I just wonder if in this game in particular, over Eriksen, he's better off just sort of playing this box-to-box role, give a side, give Casemiro one side, him the other, and just let them marshal those pockets and then break forward when those opportunities come. That's
sort of reminding me, I think, of what happened last year. You'll have to remind me in the comments. I could be wrong, never know, but let me know if I'm right. I think what happened was Martial wasn't fit, so Rashford started through the middle, Bruno started on the left, and out of possession it was McTominay and
Eriksen, and I think it was Bruno central. I think you might have had...
It might have been someone else on this left wing.
Did Weghorst lead the line?
No, Weghorst wasn't in there. Was this at the Emirates?
Yeah.
Oh, at the Emirates it might have been. At Old Trafford I was thinking. Because at Old Trafford it was Rashford, I think, through the... No,
yes,
it was Sancho on one side, wasn't it?
It was Rashford down the middle at Old Trafford, yeah.
Sancho on the left, Anthony on the right. Yeah, and I think... Was McTominay must have played at Old Trafford.
So McTominay, Bruno and Eriksen at Old Trafford, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, in that case, ignore what I was going to say because it's wrong. So yeah, let me know in the comments. Nothing to let me know because it was wrong. Martial, I think, will start, and... Look, the bit that concerns me from a United point of view is, obviously we've talked about what Arsenal can do in settled possession there, in terms of their dynamics on this side, how it can upset Dalot, upset Martinez. The bit that almost concerns me more than when Arsenal are in set possession is when we've got the ball high up. So the problem that we've had so far this season, and it's been a little bit less so with Martial because he's often the glue in the team, but when United have had the ball really high, I think players haven't quite been disciplined enough to hold their shape and trust in the combinations, make the passes, trust that you can sort of work yourselves into the right positions. And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of Bruno, always wanting to play that killer ball, keeps the ball that little bit too far out of his feet. If Rice nicks it off him, and Rice has got a pretty long stride, so he can be on you before you know. If he nicks it off Bruno here, we could have a problem where Martinez has looked really, really poor defending channels early on. So if Rice nicks the ball and he's able to maybe get it back to Partey and play a ball into the channels, I wouldn't back Martinez to do his job 1v1. I think he's been really rash, and he hasn't shown that he's... Fleck said this to me off camera a minute ago, actually, before we started. It's almost like Martinez is buying into his own hype. He's thinking, I'm the butcher. I've got to be hyper aggressive in every situation. I've got to go and slide in for everything. Against Spurs, numerous times he slide tackled the air. I don't know what was going on.
Slide tackled the air.
It's bad. But yeah, that worries me, particularly because if United do the same thing as we did against Forest when we get settled possession, it's almost a double-edged sword for Ten Hag. Do you want to keep practicing the principles that you've done all season in terms of getting the 3-2-5 sorted, so you're going to invert Dalot, get Eriksen there, but then you leave an even bigger channel for Martinez to defend down here? Or do you be a bit more pragmatic in this game, leave a proper left back there, but you make it harder for us to retain the ball in the middle because we've got one fewer option, and Casemiro and Bruno aren't great under pressure. So it almost worries me more that when United have got possession than it does when Arsenal have, because I think that stat earlier about the number of possession losses is a big problem, particularly when the counter press isn't set up, because against Forest, it was easy to walk the ball up to the halfway line, get the whole team high up so you can counter-press quickly, everyone's close to the ball. But I think against Arsenal, because there's going to be high pressure, there's that space in behind. So because of that space, there's a temptation when the players are receiving the ball deep to just hit that ball long for Rashford, for Martial, for Anthony. And the problem is, as soon as you start hitting the ball long, the team don't have time to get up the pitch. You end up with Casemiro and Eriksen defending a big space in the middle by themselves, and obviously their legs aren't the best.
The Wolves and Tottenham games were staggering, you know, how easily they were able to walk through your midfield. And I think you summed up really well when you said it's the defensive discipline you've got to have when you're attacking. You know, Man City, I mean, Pep Guardiola's reinvented football 2,000 times, but, you know, his fullbacks would be, so say Bruno and Eriksen getting forward, his fullbacks would be here to ensure that you basically, if I can actually make a little block, to make sure that you just had this block just in front. So they're almost saying, we don't really care if you have it here and here, just block that space where you can really hurt teams, and then, you know, as a unit, get back. But we don't really see Arsenal or Man United really executing that well at the moment. I think Arsenal did at times last season, well, actually, as I say, not so much this season. We haven't looked that open, but Man United sort of have. I think with us it's more mistakes, basically. If you press us and you force us into errors, we'll make errors. We are just littered with mistakes. But United, you're right. And I kind of wonder whether part of Arteta's plan might be let them come forward, almost like let them try and play a little bit, because you'll be amazed how much space you have to attack when you do win that ball back. And I can see the likes of Nketiah, who again likes to carry the ball, Rice likes to carry the ball, Martinelli, Saka on the break. I can see them having some joy in those pockets. But then I have to stress that I actually think Ten Hag will prepare for that. Yeah. You know, if you line up with the 11 that's been going out every week with the plan, I honestly would sit here right now and say, I think we'll win comfortably.
Yeah,
and I never say that about Arsenal, Man United, because it's just one of those games where those form goes out the window games. But I don't think Ten Hag is that stupid. And if he does go with it and you win, I look really stupid. I just think he'll plan. I think he'll plan. I'd be amazed if he goes with Eriksen. I actually would be.
See, I agree with you in terms of thinking that he'll plan for it. The difficulty is, though, as a manager for Ten Hag, he's implementing a new style of play, a new philosophy. The worst thing you can do in a way is change, and it works, because if you do that for a big game, you change and be more pragmatic and it works, players start asking questions. They start saying, hang on, if it's working playing a different way in a really big game, shouldn't we be doing that all the time? Shouldn't we be doing that more often?
Hasn't he always done that though, Ten Hag? I
think last season he had to, because he wanted to play out from the back. I think Ten Hag identified straight away when he came into United that there's a lot of players who've got the ability to threaten in behind. Marcus Rashford in particular, he highlighted him straight away as a key attacking weapon. And he's great when there's space in behind. So I think what Ten Hag wanted to do was create that space in behind by baiting the opposition to come and press high and then try to play through them. With De Gea, that wasn't possible in goal. And Nana helps, but there's still issues in the midfield. Casemiro is not great taking the ball under pressure on the half turn. His half turn doesn't really exist, to be honest. Bruno, likewise, as we've said, not the best under pressure. So there's still issues there. But I think now Ten Hag's at a point where he's almost there, and that Forest game is almost perfect. It was 70 minutes of implementing the structure he wants to see. That 3-2-5 with Martinez, Varane, Wan-Bissaka, sometimes Casemiro dropping in between. It worked really nicely because there wasn't much pressure from Forest. If he suddenly changes that now, it could leave the players in a difficult spot in terms of whether to keep persisting with the old way or whether they think the new way is better and stop putting in the effort. I think the other problem we've got is, in terms of inverted fullbacks, I think it's pretty clear what the idea is in terms of they're in position to win the ball back before it's lost, they're ready for the counter press. Dalot is the best at it because he's tactically so aware. What he's able to do is when he's in these positions, if the ball's getting transferred across from side to side, rather than staying on Odegaard, he'll just drop 5 yards, prepare a space really well so he can receive the ball. As soon as he's given it down one side, he's straight back onto whoever's there so that he's ready straight away. Problem is, you take him out of there, as we said earlier, Martinez is defending space. If he's then defending here, then you've got Casemiro, Eriksen, or potentially McTominay covering a big space by themselves, and their basics aren't quite so good. Casemiro stands really tall, and because his fitness is shocking at this moment in time, he's standing tall, he sticks a leg out. All it takes is a little body feint or just even powering past him from Declan Rice, from Nketiah, Saka, whoever, and he's out of the game. United are in big trouble. So it's tough.
The midfield battle's fascinating. I mean, let's highlight them. So for Arsenal, we'll do them in red because they're going to be their own team. You know, Partey, Rice, Odegaard, and then if we just go to Man United, of Eriksen, Casemiro, Bruno. That's a really fascinating battle because you've got your controllers are Odegaard and Eriksen, but they'll play in slightly different areas of the pitch. You know, Partey and Casemiro, one's tough tackling, you know, disciplined, good on set pieces, and the other's very elegant, good on the ball, can pick out, you know, passes into those pockets. And then in Rice and Fernandes, two real hard workers, but one who's more got the defensive output and the other's got the more attacking output. So it's not really a comparable midfield three. They're all kind of very different. But it's a really fascinating battle to see which balance comes out on top, and also how they execute what the manager wants them to do. Because weirdly, if you want to play a bit more sitting back, counter-attacking, try and create chances off what you get, almost having Rice and Partey sitting and Ødegaard floating in front is more suited to what United might want to do for 90 minutes. Whereas here you've got high output Fernandes, controller and Eriksen. So I'm very interested to see how they all kind of fit in, because this midfield three hasn't played together that often. I think twice, once in pre-season, once in the Community Shield. And you guys are adapting to no Mason Mount and trying to readjust the structure as well with the inverted fullback. So I don't think either midfield, as impressive as they are in terms of player names, I think a year ago, or actually go back 2 years ago, if someone showed us that these were going to be our midfields, in 2 years' time, they would have gone, that's brilliant. But actually we're going with a lot of question marks and both feeling quite undercooked.
Yeah, it is strange. I think the key thing for United in terms of that midfield battle won't necessarily be the midfielders. It will be this man here, Anthony Martial. His return to fitness is a huge boost. And the reason for that is that Bruno and Eriksen these days, because he's not really got the legs, tends to come a bit deeper, sit a little bit further back.
Get rid of these circles.
That's all right. Oh,
there you go.
That's how you remove them all at once. Yeah. Learn something new every day, don't you?
There you go.
So Eriksen tends to sit a little bit deeper. Casemiro's obviously not really going to get in the pockets, get on the half turn. Bruno likewise, he tends to prefer facing play so he can hit that killer ball. Martial really is the only one who can actually get in these spaces, come a little bit deeper, get on the half turn and link that defence to the attack. In the tactical view after the Forest game, which you hopefully have seen already, we highlighted a really nice sequence. Martial receives the ball on the half turn from Martinez, feeds the ball to Rashford, and that is the thing that United will need in terms of actually being able to get the ball forward. Otherwise, what we could see is just so many ball losses in this midfield area and United getting overrun again. So for me, Martial is the absolute key there. And if United get the ball high up the pitch for a long period of time, that's when Anthony comes into play, not really a player to burst into spaces.
Yeah, and that Zinchenko battle will be interesting too, because Anthony scored against us at Old Trafford. I think it's fair to say he's had an underwhelming start to the season. And he's not an ultra pacey player, so Zinchenko shouldn't have too many issues in that area, but then he's tricky. And I was talking to Flex about this, and I think I got the wrong impression that he had a good delivery. But I definitely think he's got something on his left foot. If he picks up the ball in this area and he opens up his body to strike, I'm not feeling good about that.
No.
There's certain players that you go, yeah, all right, go on then. But with him, I'm not feeling good about it. I do think he's got an ability to, with his left foot, do what he wants with that football and put it into some dangerous areas. So I'm interested to see how much Arsenal do just leave him alone and just say, there you go. Rio Ferdinand said to Zinchenko himself, he said, if I were playing against you, I'd leave my right winger out there. I'd say, don't even bother following Zinchenko. And Zinny couldn't believe it. He said, really? You let me just... He said, yeah, we'll lose the midfield battle, but when we get it to him, he's going to cause you trouble. So let's see if United have something similar in mind.
Yeah, I hope so.
I don't like that idea, if I'm honest.
I hope so. I think if I was United, or if I was Erik ten Hag, given the way that you set up in previous games, if you do that again with Partey at right back inverting, I think it would be a very easy decision to try and funnel Arsenal towards that side, the top side, because not only were Arsenal weaker there with the way you were setting up, but also Anthony's the best. Anthony, Martial are probably the better pressers in the team, Rashford a little bit less so it'll be easy. If you set up with Zinchenko there, it could be a bit harder. Anyway, one thing's for sure, it will be a fantastic battle.
It will.
If I had to put money on it now, I'll be putting money on an Arsenal win, I'll be honest. But we'll see what happens come Sunday. What's your score prediction?
I went wild on Forever Arsenal. I said we win 4-2. I said carnage game.
I think so.
Yeah, and I know the tendency we have it with both teams not having made the starts they wanted this season. They might shut up shop a little bit, respect each other, and it might be like a 1-0 or a 2-1 that kind of just goes one way or the other. But I actually think both managers have this stubbornness, which is like, no, hold on, we're at the stages. We've both spent a lot of money. I think Arteta more, probably quite a lot more over the years. But I think they're both like, no, hold on, these are our principles. This is what we want to do. And I can actually see it being a bit of a mental, especially kind of first half. Like I could see it being like 3-1 at half time, and then maybe there's a goal each in the second half. So I have backed my team. It's a home game. I have to. Old Trafford, I don't know if I'd be feeling so confident, yet we seem to be more solid away from home, which is weird. But Arsenal really need a response, and I think sort of Man United, there's pressure after what happened to Tottenham. So I don't know, but look at that Tottenham game, first 30 minutes, you could have and should have been 2-3-0 up, and that's what worries me. United can get in the mood. I just think we need to weather that. And if we go for this 11, I feel really, really confident. If he goes for Havertz, Partey right back, and messes around with it again, I'm not confident we're winning that game.
I think that's the key there. What Arteta does could be key in this game. Well, I'm sure it'll be a great game. Hope you've enjoyed watching this Tactical View special. Thank you so much, James, for coming on, as is tradition now. And we'll see you again before the game at Old Trafford at the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Might be possibly a game that you could potentially win the league in. So
oh, that is late in the season. Yeah, I forgot about
penultimate game. Josh has been telling me every single time I come down, reminding me. He's just waiting for that day.
Hey, let's just get through this one first. But who knows, that would be special. But big thanks for having me. I honestly, genuinely always appreciate and enjoy coming here on the United View. You guys are doing amazing stuff on this channel. Big up to you, to Flex, to Josh, KG and everyone. And I don't wish you luck on the weekend, but I wish this channel all the best, absolutely.
Thanks, James. Hope you all have enjoyed it. Let us know what you thought in the comments down below, and we'll see you all again very soon on the Tactical View.